Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Prepare Your Agency 2025 Weekly Sales Report Changes Ahead. Hi, I'm Judy Howard, Manager of Customer Experience and Training here at ARC, and I'll be your host. Presenting today will be Shelly Younger, ARC's Managing Director, Airline Retailing, and Settlement, along with Jeannine Hankinson, ARC's Managing Director of Operations and Customer Experience. However, before I turn it over to Shelly, I want to go over a few housekeeping. This is an interactive session. We encourage you to ask your questions. However, Jeannine will be looking at the questions and working with Shelly to answer those at the end of Shelly's presentation. But please, as you think of them and Shelly goes through the various topics, write them in so you don't forget, because we want to make sure that we get to as many questions as we can within the hour. And for some reason, if we don't, we'll answer any of those questions individually or in a group FAQ after this webinar is over. Also, this webinar will be recorded. To any of you that registered for this or are in attendance, you'll receive a follow-up email in the next few days, and the link to this recorded webinar will be there. You can share this with your colleagues or anyone in your organization, and we encourage you to do so. Otherwise, if you want to look for it afterwards or point someone to where they can find it, it will be located on our arccorp.com website under on-demand webinars. Okay, so without further ado, Shelly, I'm going to turn it over to you to get started.
All right, thank you very much, Judy. And a big thank you for those that are joining today. We really appreciate your time. I know everyone has so much to do, and we appreciate you being here with us. So I'm going to talk about the change to expedite reporting. But before I go there, I want to give a little history and kind of how we got here and some of the background on the input that we received around expedited reporting. Over the last few years, as the industry has changed and business practices and technology has changed, we've made a lot of operational and process updates to our settlement and reporting system. And we've worked with the agency community through a group we have called the Reporting and Settlement Advisory Council. And that group helps us identify and prioritize changes and enhancements to our settlement product. And based on the agency feedback that we get, we may change some of our priorities or change kind of how we go about doing these enhancements. And as we presented them with the expedited reporting, we received a lot of feedback on how to make changes that will help them facilitate and get their report done faster. And we're going to walk through those here in just a minute. The other item that I want to bring up is around kind of what is really driving the need to get data out there faster. And it's the demands we have for modern retailing. A lot of what we do is sometimes based on historical paper tickets, or even when electronic tickets first came out. And there have been some things that haven't changed in a really long time. And to meet the demands of our industry, we are needing to output our data much faster for the benefit of airlines and travel agencies. So when we looked at expedited reporting, which we're going to talk about more here in just a minute, agencies gave us some feedback on. There were a couple of items that they wanted to go ahead of this to make it easier to submit the report and make it easier to resolve errors in the report. And those two enhancements that were released in 2023 were moved ahead of expedited reporting, which you see here. And we decided to move that to this year. And so that's the decision that we made, and that was based on agency input. The first of the changes in 2023 was expediting our exchanges. And today, sales and refunds are output on a daily basis. So ARC receives that data in. The agencies have until the next business day at midnight to correct any errors or changes, and then we output that data to the airlines. Exchanges were actually on a weekly basis back then. And so any associated credit card billing that came from ad collections were only output weekly, and the same for refunds that were part of exchanges. And so cardholders and customers were actually getting a delay in getting their refund and a delay in any kind of ad collection. And we all know the importance of getting refunds out there faster. So we expedited exchanges to follow the same schedule as sales and refunds. So we did that last year, and that has reduced the number of errors that agencies have to do at the end of the week. They now, look at those daily, and it benefits agencies and your passengers by getting refunds out the door faster. And it did also accelerate the data associated to that to daily to our airlines. The other enhancement we called zero value transactions. And getting into a little bit of technical detail here, but it's important. These zero value transactions, which are things like infant tickets or even exchanges, we required the actions to have a cash form of payment. And that was in place for many, many years. And what would happen is if we received a credit card form of payment, we would throw those transactions into error in our agency sales reporting tool called IAR. And we would ask the agency to update those manually in IAR and fix them and put them with a cash form of payment, which required the agency to touch those transactions. And that, of course, created a lot of work. So we updated our system to be able to support credit card form of payment on those zero value transactions. And it was surprising kind of how much benefit a number of agencies saw. So no longer having to manually go in and adjust those transactions, as well as maintaining the form of payment data that was originally sent to us on infant tickets or even exchanges, which made going back and doing any refunds later also much easier. So we made those changes again October and November of 2023, and we got feedback that those needed to go in before we made any additional changes to expedite data, which would result in the agency's sales report having to be submitted a little bit sooner. So let's go right into that. So what is actually changing with expedited reporting? So we're modernizing our system to accelerate settled data by up to 2 days. And this today, airlines actually have access to their own data. So when you go buy a ticket on airline.com, they have virtually almost instantaneous access to that data. In the agency channel through ARC, the data that says this transaction was actually settled so that they can acknowledge that as potential revenue is some half days delayed. And that's a significant difference between the airline direct channel and the agency channel. And we definitely want to kind of close that gap. And we'll get to that here in just a second. So how will this impact the agency then? In order to accelerate that data, the agency's weekly sales report, which today gets authorized at midnight Eastern time every Tuesday on non-holiday weeks, This is going to be moved up from midnight to 2 p.m. Eastern time. So that means that each non-holiday week, the agency sales report will need to be submitted and authorized by 2 p.m. Eastern time. So I hinted at why this change was important, but I feel like it's really critical to kind of drive that point home. Is for us, it's about making sure that the agency channel is viable. Without agencies, ARC does not exist. So it's important for us to keep the channel competitive with the airline's direct channel. And again, the data available to the airline and their direct channel is almost instantaneous, whereas the data from the agency, especially as it comes to things like revenue recognition, revenue acknowledgement, forecasting, things like that is quite delayed. And so that is one of the critical reasons why we wanted to make this change. It also, as a side benefit, for any refunds or exchanges that are issued on Monday or Sunday, that the data around that is accelerated to the credit card companies by 1 day. So again, what does this really mean? Well, this means that the refund on a credit card form of payment is going to get out there faster to your passenger by 1 day. Again, any refunds issued on Sunday or Monday. And the same holds true for exchanges where there is, again, an ad collection or, more importantly, a refund to the passenger. So that's what's really kind of driving the change here about why we are expedited reporting and why we're changing the sales report authorization from midnight to 2. So before we made that change, right, we went in and we looked at, well, what is this really, how is this really going to impact agencies? And when we looked at when agencies are actually authorizing their report today, we looked at a 6-month time frame. And we said, well, when are agencies authorizing their report? And today, 85% of agencies already authorize their report by 2 p.m. Eastern time. And if you look at the largest agencies, of course, that number jumps to 92%. But if we looked at that, if you really kind of stop and think about that, that means that a majority, obviously, of the reports are already being authorized by 2 p.m. And again, I want to kind of bring home the point that this effort was moved to this year so that we could implement the other 2 items, and again, make it easier on the agency to actually go in and authorize the report on Tuesday. So again, how does this directly impact you? We're moving towards an effective date of January 13th, 2025. So what we're doing right now is kind of providing education and also plenty of advance notice so that anything that you have to do to submit your report by 2 p.m., any process changes or kind of how you're going about authorizing your report, you have plenty of time to do that. So between now and January, we're going to be doing a lot of communication with the agency community through a variety of mechanisms, including the one that we have here today. So what we're doing is we're moving towards this January 13th date. And so what that means is that on January 13th, that will be the first time the agency will actually authorize the report by 1:59 p.m., 2 p.m. instead of the current 11:59 p.m. Eastern time. And so the first impacted weekly authorization date will actually be Tuesday, January 4th, 2025. And again, that is what we're moving towards. And we wanted to give plenty of advance notice here. As we know that changes like this, although a number of people are already authorizing the report, those that are on the West Coast and Hawaii and Alaska, we need to make some changes and focus on authorizing their report, focus on getting all of their errors corrected daily and Monday night. And again, just wanting to give folks plenty of time here. So what are we kind of asking, or what do we hope that you guys can do? We wanted to we sat back and said, well, how can we help agencies really get ready for this change? And we've done, again, outreach through our Reporting and Settlement Advisory Council, of which we have over 40 distinct agencies that participate in that. We collaborate with external parties to get the word out and to help us educate and get the word out, like today, webinar sessions directly with the agency community. We're doing a great deal of direct agency outreach, so one-on-one with the agencies to talk about the impact and what changes may be needed. And we're going to have a series of email communications through our TAC messaging that goes out daily, and direct messaging in several of our applications, including IAR and MyARC. We will also have a frequently asked FAQ that will go up sometime in the next couple of months here, and it will provide hopefully a number of questions, answers to any questions that you have. And so we'll get that out as well. Again, how can you prepare for this change? Education, especially taking this back to those that currently manage the ARC sales report, or those utilizing our back office file. So we want to make sure that agencies are reconciling your report daily and not waiting till Tuesday to start correcting a lot of those errors. That's really critical, is to make sure you're reconciling daily. And then there's a particular scenario that we know has come up, is making sure that your residual value MCOs or EMDs are issued on the same day in the GDS. If you issue the exchange and then you issue the MCO or the EMD on a different day, and that causes the agency to have to go in and do a lot of reconciliation and manual update in IAR. So that is actually a piece of feedback we received directly from agencies, and wanted to make sure we get the education out. Review best practices to avoid common IAR errors. And in our industry agents handbook, we have a number of recommendations, and we also have several best practices out there to avoid common errors. And then another item that we received information on was to make sure that agencies review any back office scripts that you may have going that need to be altered to support this change. So those are some of the ways that we think that you can prepare for, coming January 2025 changes. Would love to hear others if you've got them. So if you want to put them in the chat, any recommendations that I can add to this list, I would love to. And that pretty much wraps up my piece, Jeannine.
Sure.
Shall we go ahead and open it up to questions?
Yes, we have some questions for you, Shelly. I will try to consolidate those that are similar.
Okay.
Answer them in one swoop, so just bear with me a little bit. First one is a specific question about WorldSpan. It says, I work in WorldSpan. If I exchange a ticket on Monday, I only have same day to reverse the exchange. Am I allowed to make corrections or changes in ARC on Tuesday as far as voiding the exchange?
Okay, so anything that you've issued on Monday is going to load into IAR on Tuesday, and you will still have midnight of that business day to make any changes or error corrections. So the Tuesday authorization window only applies to the previous week's transactions and the agency's ability or kind of authorization of moving the money from the previous week. So your Monday transactions, you'll have till Tuesday at midnight. Your Tuesday transactions, you'll still have till Wednesday at midnight. I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, please let Jeannine know, and I'm happy to take a look at the question again.
Thanks, Shel. So there's a few questions I'm going to put together, Shelly.
Okay.
The theme is around the West Coast agents, and also specifically in some questions, Alaska and Hawaii. And in general, the theme is not necessarily a question per se, but a theme that it seems unfair to the West Coast agents because they will have to come in early. Also, was there any consideration taken to changing per time zone, so 2:00 p.m. per time zone? So I'm consolidating this, Shelly, to really kind of say, if we could talk to you a little bit about the research we did with Alaska and Hawaii and the number of agents that are there, and also kind of West Coast and what is stopping us from going to per time zone reporting cycle.
Sure, thank you for kind of summarizing those up, Jeannine.
If I summarized too briefly and I missed on an actual point, please let me know, but I think I consolidated about 3 or 4 questions there.
Sure. We'll start with the second kind of core question first, and then I'll move to the first one. And in order to really change to kind of by time zones, there is honestly a massive, it would be massive change to our end-to-end applications and processes. And something like that would be honestly a multi-year effort. And so you kind of have to weigh out, right, what you're going to kind of achieve from that versus the cost in that. And again, when we looked at how many people were already authorizing their report, it just did not necessarily make sense to go in and try to do that extensive amount of work. There would also be changes to the GDS kind of files and how they get files and transactions to us, and it could have led to kind of development and changes on their part, which is always really tough to have happen, especially all of them at once and at the same time. That's virtually impossible. So that is a key reason why we were not able to do anything by time zone. The first question, the first kind of key question you were asking about West Coast and Alaska and Hawaii. We actually went in and looked at the number of agencies in Alaska and Hawaii, and it's less than 20. And the volume there was still pretty low compared to the overarching volume. So we had to make kind of a business decision on that. And we do understand, though, that there is an impact, which again is why we are giving as much notice as we can. If you take Alaska and Hawaii out of it, Jeannine, and you look at just the West Coast, a great majority of the agencies in the West Coast were actually already authorizing their report. The other item to consider is that honestly, some of the agencies that show located in the West Coast are actually having their reports authorized in another time zone. So there's that impact there. Did I do you think I summarized the answers there? Do you think I touched on that, or do I
I
need
think
to?
you did, Shelly. I think you did. And if there's other additional questions related to the summary of that, please feel free to just let me know. But I think you touched upon, and the other thing I would add is, in addition to what you've already presented, the fact that we have made it easier to process your report early. Hopefully there is minimal time and minimal changes that are needed early on Tuesday morning versus a year and a half ago where there are more errors and more work that needs to be done. So I think you summarized.
Thank you. You brought up a point, Jeannine, that I want to kind of circle back to, is that when we've been getting feedback directly from agencies, what we've asked them to do is to go back into their report and see what is driving needing extensive time on Tuesday morning. So we're asking folks to, if you think it is going to be a challenge, go in and actually do some evaluation and say, why am I having to spend so much time on Tuesday morning to actually get my report authorized? Because the majority of errors should already be corrected by Monday night. So yeah, we're kind of offering that as folks to go check and then come back and let us know.
Perfect. Thanks, Shell. Next one is easy enough. I'll even answer it for you, Shell.
Okay.
The weekly report will continue to be sent on Tuesday, will only the time change. And yes, that is accurate, except the fact when there is a holiday, we'll follow the same procedure that we do today for the holiday schedule. The time will be adjusted, but you are correct, the day itself is not being adjusted.
And we'll actually have that out there, Jeannine, on our FAQ. So we'll show non-holiday weeks, Monday holiday week, and Tuesday holiday week.
Perfect.
So that everyone can see it. Yeah.
Okay, Shell, next one is, I might have missed this, but will reports need to be settled daily by 2 p.m. Eastern, or is it just the weekly? I'm sorry, I'm getting old, guys. Sorry, I have to adjust my glasses. Let me just rephrase this for you, Shell. Hold on one second. I might have missed this, but will reports need to be settled daily by 2 p.m. Eastern time, or is it just the weekly closing that needs to occur by 2 p.m.? For example, if we had an exchange issued yesterday, I need to add a penalty onto it. Would I need to complete that by 2 p.m. today?
No. So it just impacts the Tuesday kind of authorization, kind of pressing the button. So for your previous week's Monday through Sunday transactions, you again should have already corrected any errors. So it's just the Tuesday authorization that you do in IER. You will still have until the next business day at midnight to review your errors, to add penalties, to make changes, add MCOs in case they were forgotten for residual values. So as just a reminder for everyone, Monday issued transactions have until Tuesday at midnight, Tuesday till Wednesday at midnight, Wednesday till Thursday at midnight, Thursday till Friday, and then Friday, Saturdays, and Sunday issued transactions have until Monday at midnight.
Thank you. Shelly, the next question is related to the statistics that you shared related to the percentage of agencies that submit the report before 2, okay? So it says, I'm curious as to when the 6-month study was done. Was it done before or after the exchange data having to be submitted the same day?
It was performed after the exchange data was submitted every day and after zero value transactions. So we waited until both of those went in, and we actually pulled data from, if I remember correctly, it's from November the 1st through the end of April is when we pulled that data.
Okay. Okay, bear with me. The next one's a little long, but
okay.
It's good. Will ARC have an enhancement to fix the common error where an old ticket has been exchanged and then the exchange ticket get exchanged further on the same day, resulting in 2 exchanges issued? This happens when a ticket is exchanged today, and then latest ticket gets exchanged further on the same day today. Both exchange transactions get loaded into IAR the next day, but the agency will have to remove or unhook the old ticket from the latter transaction. Exchange in error status in order to fix the first exchange, then go back to the latter exchange and add the old ticket. Yeah, that's.
Thank you. No, thank you for bringing this issue up. One of the things that we're doing actually in September is looking at how we load transactions into IAR. The timing of that load today, without getting too technical, is supposed to be, you know, sales, refunds, exchanges, excuse me, and voids. And what we've seen, again, it's been going on for a number of years, but it's definitely something that I'm pretty passionate about changing, is fixing how we load those transactions into IAR so that we minimize these kinds of issues. We recently made some changes around how voids are loaded, so we're seeing some positive results from that, but we need to do more, and that's happening in September. I can't tell you this, like, how significant the change is going to be until the analysis is done and they decide on a path forward, but please know that we are definitely looking at that.
Okay. Shelly, the next question is, will we receive debit memos if we miss the 2 p.m. Eastern time date time?
Jeannine, I'm going to turn that one over to you.
I knew you were going to say that. So I thought you were going to say that. So of course, ARC does not issue debit memos, so that is done by the airline. So we don't control debit memos or when they go out. But what does happen is if you miss your deadline, it's considered a late report, and there is a penalty for late reporting. With that said, we are going to provide a grace period at the beginning. Shelly and I are looking at what that really means and what that needs to be. I don't plan on instituting fees immediately upon implementation, but shortly thereafter. So we are going to give a little grace period around that, unless there's something egregious and it's not involving the 2 o'clock. So we can talk through that, but we don't issue debit memos. That's up to the airlines, but we would have a late reporting fee as this is instituted.
Jeannine, you also, one of the things that I wanted to mention too that you and I have talked about is the airline can make the decision to issue a debit memo for a late report, right? That is their commercial decision to make. We're obviously going to be working with them as we approach this targeted date to hopefully ask them to give some kind of grace period. I can't promise that on their side, but that's one of the items on our go-to-market, our action item list, is to make sure the airlines know what's happening, why it's happening, and to hopefully offer some sort of grace period.
Would you be able to, this is for Judy. Judy, we could refresh this later, but just a reminder, would you be able to email the slideshow so that we can forward to our team? So Judy will bring that together again for you guys. The answer is yes, and she'll make sure at the end that you're able to access the slides. Shelly, the next question is, just to confirm, the weekly sales report must be submitted by 1:59 p.m. Eastern Time Tuesday. And yes, the answer to that is accurate, beginning in, we're moving towards a January implementation date of that. The next one, Shelly, is what about Friday? Do we have until Monday?
Yes, you do. So Fridays, Saturdays, and Sunday issued transactions, you still have until Monday at midnight to make any adjustments, modifications, or error corrections.
And that ties right into the second one, Shelly, just so you know, it's, and then you just answered it. The next question was weekend transactions can still be voided until Monday before midnight.
That is correct, yes.
Do we have to do the IAR report daily effective January 13th? I think there's a confusion, Shelly, between
Yes.
cleaning up your report versus submitting the report. I think that's a theme here.
Okay, let's stop and take some time with that then. So today, when you issue the transaction in the GDS, or you log into IAR and manually enter a transaction, which doesn't happen very often, but every once in a while it does. Those transactions, especially those issued in the GDS, which is the vast majority, those are sent to us throughout the day and night, and then each morning we actually kick off a lot of processes before they're loaded into IAR, but we have a number of different processes that kick off, and then we load transactions into the IAR tool the next morning. The agency has, for sales, refunds, and exchanges now, has until midnight of that day. So Monday issued transactions have until Tuesday at midnight to make modifications, error corrections, any kind of changes to your sales report. And that process takes place every day, with the exception of what I said a few minutes ago. Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays transactions, you have until Monday at midnight to make changes. That is completely different than each week the agency actually goes in and authorizes their previous week's sales report. And the key piece around that is from the previous week, so Monday through Sunday's transactions, the errors need to have been corrected. And when you press that button in IAR to authorize your sales report, what you're doing is you're saying, hey, all of my transactions are submitted through ARC, they're accurate, and they authorize us to move money around. From the agency to the airline, from the airline to the agency, and this also includes, for those of you that are participating in ARC Pay, you're authorizing the ARC Pay funds to be sent to you by ARC, to be moved into your bank accounts. So there's a big difference between those two things. There's the daily working, the operational working of your IAR report, and then there's the authorization of your previous week's report in IAR. Jeannine, is there anything that you want to add to that?
That's perfect, Shelly. I think that answers the theme that I'm seeing here in a couple of questions.
Sure. And if you need anything else, please feel free to reach out to our customer care center. We also have a lot of documentation online in the industry agent's handbook that walks through this. So we have some resources for you in case you have any more questions.
Shelly, this is a follow-up to a question you answered earlier. It said, thank you very much for your explanation. By voiding an IAR, will the coupon open in WorldSpan to be applied to another itinerary, or will it not update in WorldSpan?
So what happens when so there's obviously two different mechanisms for you to void a transaction, right? If you're talking about the void of a sale or the void of a refund, you can either perform that void in your GDS, no matter which GDS you're in. And what that does is that communicates with the airline's e-ticket database. And it says, basically the first kind of question is it open to be voided? And then there's a response back that says, yes, it got voided. And that's affectionately known in our industry as an ESAC code, an electronic settlement authorization code. And so your agency will get back that ESAC code that's stored, that's sent to us on the file by the GDS. If you go into IAR to actually void the transaction, we do something similar. For sales and refunds, we actually use a third-party technology, and we go out and do the same thing. We check the airline's e-ticket database, and then it's the airline that will tell us whether or not that void can be completed. If it can't be completed, you will not get a settlement, an ESAC code, and it will tell you on screen that you can't move forward with the void. If you do get back an ESAC code, you can move forward and void that transaction in IAR. The exception is going to be MCOs and exchanges. Those need to be voided in the GDS because in IAR, if you void an exchange, we don't have the functionality to go back out and open the original ticket and do all of that the GDS does. We're just not designed to be a GDS, of course. So any real, kind of voiding of an exchange needs to be done in the GDS. There are always exceptions to every rule, and people ask, well, why do you have voiding of exchanges in IAR? And there are a number of different scenarios, but every once in a while technology does some amazing things, there are always kind of glitches that happen, and an exchange that you've done or a void that you've done in the GDS may not get to us. And so it is the agency's responsibility, though, if you go in and void an exchange in IAR, to make sure that upstream that has really happened in your GDS. That was a long-winded answer to your question, but I wanted to make sure I got the full story out.
No, it's perfect. Thank you, Shelly. Shelly, I'm going to handle the next one for you.
Okay.
The question is there a grace period or any exceptions on the time in case of computer, weather, etc.? This week we were over 2 minutes. We were over by 2 minutes as we were waiting for another department to advise on status of an issue with a ticket. So because of the change in the window, this doesn't change this process or procedure. We hold tight on our window and our time. However, with that said, we do make exceptions when needed on a case-by-case basis, whether that is a hurricane, massive power outage. In the past, we've had GDS failures. So we will make that exception on a case-by-case basis, but that is literally on a case-by-case basis. So this projected change does not change that process. So that process will continue to be in place as it is today.
Jeannine, is it also true that the massive weather events, right? That sometimes there is a need to extend the report, period.
We actually don't extend the report. That was a few years ago. We stopped doing that, Shelly.
Okay.
But we do take it into consideration
Gotcha.
as needed based on, like I said, if there's a hurricane and if there's a regional problem, yes, we will take that into consideration.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Next question. There are notifications that will occur if the report is submitted past 2 o'clock deadline, or will the report not submit? So basically, how will that work? So if they pass the 2 o'clock, what does that look like to the agent?
So I want to make sure I am answering your question. So if you miss that 1:59 deadline, you're saying what happens, right? Will I
Basically,
see?
yes. If the report is submitted past 2, or will the report, like, do they get a notification like, hey, you've missed the deadline, you passed 2, or will this report not even go through it to past 2 is what they're asking.
Okay, for the first part, I'm going to actually double check that, Jeannine. I want to go back and make sure that I'm getting the correct answer on whether or not you'll get a notification. So will something pop up in IAR? Will there be something like that? And I want to double check that with our IAR expert first. So I don't want to give you, bad information. So I will go back and do that. In terms of your second part of your question, you'll always be able to submit even late. So even today, right, even if you miss that 11:59 authorization window, 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time authorization window, you can still submit. It's a late submission. Correct. And Jeannine kind of walked through that process. So you'll still be able to submit after 2. it will just be considered a late submission. But I will go back and get an answer to your first question.
Perfect. Shelly, I think we need just a little refresher on the kind of maybe the history of how we got to 2 o'clock and where we kind of started. And I'll read the question and then I'll tell you my thoughts of
Okay.
some I've heard you say in the past. Not really changing by time zone, they understand, but how about doing 6 p.m. deadline? And one thing we didn't touch on is the point of where we started and hearing the agents and where we ended up from noon to 2. Maybe you could touch on that and why we have the time that we do.
Sure. So originally when we kind of talked through this last year with agencies, it was actually going to be 11:59 a.m. Eastern time. And again, after a lot of conversations, discussions, I went back to our technology team and I said, I need the latest time that you can give me in order for ARC to then kick off all of our processes to sort of sum up the weekly report, do the balancing for every single agency, create whatever cash net remittances are going to be moved the following Friday for every agency. There are literally hundreds of processes that people don't see behind the scenes when after the agency kind of pushes that button in order for us to get data out the door for that final period. Also, to calculate that the net remit for each sales report is accurate, to actually then move that data to our operations center so that we can be ready to move that money. All of that takes a number of hours. And so if we push it past 1:59, there is a high likelihood that it will start to impact next day's processing, which means it could in fact delay when we load the next day's transactions into your report. That is not something that I wanted to do, because then that gives you less time and causes a lot more struggles for your next day's transactions. So we actually went to the latest time that all of us could feel comfortable still meeting all of the jobs and processes that I just described.
Okay. The next one, Shell, is just, I think we've answered this, but I just want to read it just because it came in a little bit later. Host your answer. So I want to make sure that the agent understands. It really is just basically about the change. So I'm confused. The report has to be submitted always on Tuesday. The difference is instead of midnight, it's 2 p.m. Eastern time, correct? The answer is yes, that is correct. And the first time that will be submitted on Monday, 13th of January, I believe they mean. So the 13th of January at 2 p.m. Eastern time, is that correct? Well, you say it's stated Monday, but it's Tuesday at 2 p.m.
It begins the week, our target is beginning the week starting January 13th, but the first time the actual change will really impact you is going to be Tuesday, January 14th, 2025. So on Tuesday, January 14th, 2025 will be the first time that you move from that 11:59 p.m. Eastern time authorization to 1:59 p.m. authorization.
The next question is around a grace period for technical problems. I think I covered that. If I didn't, let me know. But again, it's case-by-case basis. Absolutely, if there's a GDS problem, a technical problem, we need to know that. And if you call into our customer care center, we take that into consideration for you. Shelly, the next one says to go back to question 1. I believe in Galileo, we cannot void an exchange unless same day. So you saying we can void an exchange in IAR next day, even though it doesn't work in Galileo?
That is correct. However, I want to caution here that the reason the void of an exchange in IAR is there is because if you've exchanged in the GDS and we don't get that exchange for some reason, historically, it doesn't happen, honestly, hardly ever, but every once in a while, the void of the exchange is not sent to us. And so we allow the agency to go in and void that exchange. However, if you haven't voided the exchange in the GDS and you go in and void the exchange in IAR, you will likely receive one or more debit memos from the airline, because that exchange is still open in the GDS. That new ticket is still open and available to fly, but you have voided it in IAR, so the airline did not get the report of that. And so the passenger will have flown on the new ticket, but the new ticket will not have been reported to the airline, and you will likely receive debit memos.
Okay, Shelly, we have another Apollo question. So one issue we have in Apollo is when an exchange that was issued on a Friday and then voided Friday night after we closed by our after hours company has been corrected on Saturday, but our office is closed over the weekend. We have no one having access to ARC. Those used to be able to be corrected on Monday. Is that something that can be reviewed?
Those still can be corrected on Monday. So that has not changed with this. So anything that you're doing on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday that you are correcting today on Monday in IAR, you will still be able to do that.
The next question is not related to this topic. It has to do with how we pick the holidays schedules for the year that we follow.
Okay.
So I'll be happy to, we'll take that question. I don't want to ignore it, but I will take that offline with the documented questions to make sure that we have the accurate answer for you, how we pick the specific holidays that we follow.
Okay.
Okay to issue report Monday night. Yes, absolutely. If you want to issue early, please go right ahead. You could issue early as long as you closed out everything as Shelly has stated.
Yeah, and we actually do have a surprising number of reports with transactions, not just zero value reports that are issued before, they're authorized, excuse me, before Tuesday.
Okay, this next one, Shell, is can transactions get loaded into IAR on Mondays earlier for Pacific Standard Time to make sure any fixes, voids are corrected before the end of the day? So this has to do with how we get the data and its load into the system.
So that load time in the morning is driven a lot by the volume of transactions. And so Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays transactions, we still load, right? Fridays still get loaded on Saturday, Saturdays get loaded Sunday morning, Sundays get loaded Monday morning. Right now, we are processing those transactions as quickly as possible. And so a lot of it does depend on the volume. So right now, I cannot promise that change. But again, part of what we're doing in September is I mentioned sort of how things are being loaded in IAR and the sort of linear fashion and how we're loading them. We are also going to look at, are there any changes we can make to get the transactions in there faster? I can't promise anything right now, but that is part of what we're going to be looking at in September.
Shelly, the next question is similar, but related to more how the GDSs or system providers provide the data to us. So how many hours from a transaction in the GDS until it arrives to ARC?
So this one gets tricky, and so bear with me as I give you the answer. Today, depending on the GDS, most of them send multiple files to us. So because of the extensive volume of transactions issued, what happens is that right after midnight on the GDS's sort of whatever they consider their local time, they will begin batching up transactions that are issued from, literally right after midnight to some period of time. Depending on the GDS, that time frame differs. So I'm just going to use this as an example, but let's say they batch up transactions from midnight to 4. And again, this is just an example. They will then kind of package those up and send those to us in a file set. Then, 4:01 a.m. to whatever time, they'll package it up and send it to us. Today, the process that we have in place is we get those file sets and we do some initial kind of edits on them. Then every day right after midnight, we actually kick off processes to make sure it's actually a little later, because some of the GDSs actually don't get us the final file set till very early in the morning the next day. So for instance, all of Monday's transactions issued late in the day may not come to us until the file set on very early Tuesday morning. So we start kicking off those processes on the next morning. And it's done in batch today. So we batch all of those up and load those in. Now, one of the things that we looked at historically was, well, what if we took each of those file sets that we receive and start to process them immediately and load them into IAR? And that actually created a whole other set of issues for the agency and for ARC in terms of how people were working the report, how they were waiting for future transactions to come in. And so it's not something that I would definitely be open to looking at that in the future, and happy to kind of run that by our Reporting and Settlement Advisory Council and see what the agency community thinks about that. Again, when I looked at this a couple of years ago, the final sort of recommendation is that they did not want that to happen for a number of different reasons. But I'm always happy to go back and consider that and have our agency community weigh in.
So Shelly, we do have a few more questions. However, we are at 2:57. So what we're going to do is, for those that we have not answered your questions, I apologize, but we are going to go ahead and take those offline, and Judy will talk to how we're going to get those responses back out to you. Before I turn it over to Judy, I just want to take the opportunity to thank all the agents for very good questions, very productive questions. We really truly appreciate your support on this. We know change isn't easy and change isn't fun for anybody, but we appreciate you looking into the processes that would need to change for your agency to support this effort. And again, like Shelly said, myself, Shelly, our call center, we are all available for you. If you feel like you have a roadblock and you want to run it by us and just brainstorm with us, we're happy to do that. Like Shelly noted, we've done that for the last few years, so we feel pretty steady on what we were able to accomplish. But if we miss something and you feel like there's something that we can help you with, please let us know. And we really appreciate the questions so that we can get the word and the education out to the community. It means a lot to us. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Judy, who kind of wrap us up on the administrative items and make sure that everybody understands how to facilitate the rest of the questions, etc. So Jude, go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jeannine. Nice summarization. I appreciate that. And thank you. A big thank you to Shelly. This has been a lot of really good information, and Jeannine, to you as well, for helping put all of this together. And I want to thank all of you for taking the time to join us today. And if some of your colleagues haven't been able to attend, or even others outside of your organization that have an interest in learning more about this really important topic that's coming up and will be implemented in January of 2025, please share. This recording will be sent out to all of you in the next few days, so you will be able to access it. And for those that just want to go to our website, you can access it, like I said earlier, through arccorp.com on-demand webinars. So you have access to it, re-listen to it. If you still have questions, like Jeannine said, let us know. You can contact our customer care center, cchelp@arccorp.com. You can, if there's ones that you feel you want to reach directly out to me, feel free to do that, jhoward@arccorp.com, and I'll make sure those get directed to Shelly and Jeannine. And for the unanswered questions, I know Shelly will be working to put an FAQ together, and we will have that posted on our website as well. And what we can do as a follow-up for this session, I'll work with our marketing team so that we can get a link to those FAQs sent out. And if you find that your question's not answered, again, like we've been saying, please reach out. We're happy to help. And again, we're at time. So again, thank you, Shelly, Jeannine. Thank you for all of you that have joined and taken the time to be with us today. Again, let us know how we can help further. Okay, thanks, and
Thank you all.
have a good night, good rest of your day, wherever you may be in time zones. Thanks.